Undersecretary Kemp, more people have lost the right to vote in the state of Georgia. They've been purged, they've been suppressed, and they've been scared. This is a man who had someone arrested for helping her blind father cast a ballot. He raided the offices of organizations to stop them from registering voters. That type of voter suppression feeds the narrative, because voter suppression isn't only about blocking the vote. It's also about creating an atmosphere of fear, making people worry that their votes won't count.
Tonight in Georgia, an election that is effectively deadlocked. Stacey Abrams, the Democrat you saw there, running to become the first African-American in American history, faced off in a debate with Republican Secretary of State Brian Kemp. Abrams is currently suing Kemp for suppressing votes in the election that he is both running in and overseeing. Kemp, for his part, is well aware that African-American and minority turnout is a problem for him. He voiced his concerns over Abrams' voters' outreach to donors at an event last week. A recording of that event was given to Rolling Stone reporter Jamil Smith, who posted it online hours before tonight's debate.
As worried as we were going into the start of early voting with the literally tens of millions of dollars that they are putting behind to get out the vote efforts for their base, a lot of that with absentee ballot requests. They have just an unprecedented number of that, which is something that continues to concern us, especially if everybody uses and exercises their right to vote, which they absolutely can, and mails those ballots in. We got to have heavy turnout to offset that.
Kemp's campaign today confirmed he was at the event and made no comment on the remarks. Tonight, the issue of election integrity was central to the debate.
As you know, in a recent video, you called on illegals to vote for you in this election. I was actually shocked. I had to watch that video twice. So my question is, why are you encouraging people to break the law for you in this election?
Mr. Kemp, you are very aware that I know the laws of Georgia when it comes to voting. In fact, I am one of the foremost experts in the state on expansion of voting rights. And I have never in my life asked for anyone who is not legally eligible to vote to be able to cast a ballot. What I've asked for is that you allow those who are legally eligible to vote to allow them to cast their ballots. And in fact, we took you to court in 2016, and a federal judge said that you illegally canceled 34,000 registrations. You used the exact same system, the exact match system that is under dispute right now.
Talk more
about welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. As you all know, this run for governor in Georgia is still under hot debate. You can imagine they're at a dead heat, as it is now. But there are three people in this race, and one person has to get 50%. If not, they go to a runoff. Now, the runoff is due in December, and between now and then, we'll probably hear a lot of complaints about voter suppression. And as you know, Kemp is Secretary of State. He gets to count the votes. Now, what's the state of affairs in 2018? It sounds more like Money, Mississippi in the 50s with the suppression of the vote, or black people not being able to vote properly. What say you, Brother Clemson?
Well, first of all, let me congratulate and let me thank all of the people, especially Africans in Georgia and in Florida and everywhere who came out to vote. But of course, it's not just African people, but it is people of consciousness and people who would like to see America move into a direction in which it becomes more of, and you know, the term inclusive is a narrative that's thrown around, but where it is open for people in this country, all of us, to participate and therefore evolve as a higher species of humanity, because that's really what's at stake, and is being driven not only by the ideas and the consciousness of people who want to see this country become a better place in humanity, but it is also being driven by nature itself, because this is, you know, we talked about time on this program at one point, and we was talking about time being a human construct. But what is not a human construct is seasons. And this is a season in which there is corrections, in which the African who is the original human being, and some research say the only Homo sapiens sapien, and we could get into that because it's not my scientific research, but it is the research of institutions that has traced through bone fragments humanity going back to Europe, where the African migrated into Europe some 35,000 years ago, when there was only Africans on the planet, and there was Neanderthals, who is a species before Homo sapiens sapien in Europe, and the Africans, they call it admixture, but had some mating with the Neanderthal, and they have done fragments, because the question is what happened to the Neanderthals, but what they have determined was that most Europeans still have from 5 to 15% Neanderthal genes, which is the species that is before Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens sapien evolved.
Well, how about coming into the 21st century?
No, I'm coming there, because these are the people we're dealing with, those Neanderthals that were.
That's your joke.
Yeah.
Are you calling Trump a Neanderthal?
Oh, Trump is definitely a Neanderthal. You know, the Neanderthal.
He is primitive.
Yeah, definitely primitive. But Neanderthals were cave, you know, the cave people, and the admixture of Homo sapiens sapien with
Well, let's get to the topic that we're talking about today.
Okay.
The suppression of the vote.
All right. What I was
how in the 21st century we're dealing with things that in our era, the 50s, the 60s, we had a serious problem, and people had a problem voting. What do you say, Brother Leroy, about what's happening in Georgia?
Well, the first thing, first of all, thank you for inviting me on the show, and we thank the Most High for all of us being here in the discussion. That the best way to look at this, what was called an election yesterday, is to look at the history of black people in America.
Okay.
If you look at the election yesterday, you're doing yourself a disservice. You have to go back into the period of time when we were, quote, freed from slavery. And look at that period of time where we had growth and development, where we elected folks to office, senators, in what is called the Reconstruction period. And how that was portrayed to us while we were in high school and college. We saw cartoon type of depiction of the black people who were in office eating chicken and chasing white women in the legislature. And that's what I remember. So, and they were called carpetbaggers, the whites who came from the north. Today they're called liberals, all right? Yesterday they were called carpetbaggers, interlopers, people who are coming uninvited to impose their will on the South through black people. So when you go back to that time and come forward, and to use the book of Du Bois, Black Reconstruction in America, is a good vehicle to look at that period coming forward. I don't call it voter suppression, because like gentrification, it hides the intent of the enemy against black people. it is not voter suppression, it is denial of democracy to black people.
Really, really. That's
because
a good way
that's
to put
the
it.
effect and that's the intent.
That's it.
And if America is a democracy, how could they be overthrowing countries,
Right.
so-called for democracy, and have this going on here in America where votes were not just stolen in the present, but votes were stolen in our present time. In the election of Bush
2000,
Jr.,
2000.
Bush Jr. 1, Bush Jr. 2.
Right.
The lesson we gained from those elections is that we were counting on Albert Gore to fight the fight to become president legitimately. He did not. We were depending on him. The second time around, we were depending on Kerry to fight the fight for him to become president,
Right.
and therefore we would be free at last,
Yeah,
free at last.
yeah.
Great God Almighty, we're free at last. But we were effectively maybe
Bamboozled again.
double-crossed.
I think so. I remember that election too. I
Okay.
think we had up in the upper tri-states, Wisconsin, Missouri, there was some stolen votes.
The votes were stolen
uncounted.
in the first one. They were stolen all across the board, but in the first one, the denial of the votes down in Florida, and you had
Right,
students who had come out to vote for Gore, coming out of the administration of Clinton to vote for Gore, and those votes were denied. And not just the students, but denied in Florida. You had civil rights leaders stand up and protest it, and then all of a sudden the thing disappeared. So you wonder, wow. And those names that were classified as felon in that first election were never reinserted as legitimate. Now, coming to the present, the audience should endeavor to go to a website, gregpalace.com.
I have that piece here.
One of them. Yeah, one of the pieces.
I have one of them.
With the 92-year-old.
No, I've got a different one.
Okay.
Where they talk about the mailing out the postcard. Well, let's go through that one then. We'll come back. Run number 4, and you'll see exactly what. You'll get a. Here's a good view of what this crack has been. I mean, this this government official, the Secretary of State, running for governor, is also this, counting votes. All right, I'll show you what this guy is doing. All right.
And with Juan Gonzalez.
As we continue to look at voter suppression in Georgia, a new investigation has found that the Georgia Secretary of State and Republican gubernatorial candidate Brian Kemp has overseen the removal of more than 340,000 current Georgia residents from voting rolls. In a moment, we will be joined by journalist Greg Palast. But first, I want to turn to part of a new video he produced about the voter purge in Georgia.
How did Kemp wipe out the registrations of 550,000 voters? He used the postcard trick. Kemp sent out millions of these cards, requiring voters to confirm their addresses. Problem? They look like junk mail. 8 out of 10 voters who get them throw them away. Throw away the card, and Kemp can throw you off the rolls. The trick? Not everyone gets a postcard. Mostly, they go to neighborhoods like this.
This is my neighborhood, and this is where I almost got purged.
Stacy Hopkins is a community organizer.
Give me a hug. Give me a hug, baby. This is also a community that's rapidly changing. It impacts us as a voting community. With all these empty houses, our vote is being lost. Our political power is being lost.
When Kemp sent her a postcard, he picked the wrong target.
I look at these mailers that are telling me and 2 of my children that if we did not fill out these forms and return them, we were going to be moved to the inactive list. But we had just voted. I decided to try and hold Mr. Kemp accountable for that because I wanted to know why he didn't want me to vote. We filed suit against Secretary of State Kemp.
And she won, big time.
159,000 were restored to the voting rolls, and that was a good feeling.
But what feels bad is that more than 500,000 voters remain on the purge list. We had to threaten Kemp with a federal lawsuit, but he finally gave up the names of every voter he purged. Then we made all the names public. I was flooded with 1,900 emails from Georgians stunned they had lost their right to vote.
Investigative journalist Greg Palast attempted to question Georgia Secretary of State, the Republican gubernatorial candidate Brian Kemp, about the purge.
Mr. Kemp, are you removing black voters from the voter rolls just so you can win this election? Why are you purging voters from the voter rolls? Sir, why aren't you answering my questions? Sir, why do we have to sue you to get the names of voters who've been removed? Why are you... Let go of me right now, sir. Okay, is there any other reporter being thrown out here?
Yes, sir, he said you specifically.
So that's Greg Palast questioning the Republican candidate for governor, Brian Kemp, who's the Secretary of State. Greg Palast, the journalist who's been investigating Kemp and voter suppression in Georgia, director of the 2016 documentary titled The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. You are suing Brian Kemp as well, Greg Palast. Explain what you found and why you're suing him.
Well, you see, he wouldn't answer my questions, so he's going to have to answer them in a federal court. This is a follow-up to my Rolling Stone 2016 investigation. We are suing him, and I say we, including civil rights organizations, to find out why he's removed 340,134 Georgians on supposed evidence that they've left the state or left their county, and they are still in their home registration addresses. They haven't left. So you're talking 1/3 of a million people. If these people show up to vote on November 6th, they're going to find that they can't vote. They'll be handed a provisional ballot, but it won't be counted. This is huge. And these lists are violently racially prejudiced. So we are going into court to get all the answers why he did this. We know it's wrong. And from my other investigations, I was able to get inside his operation and get some of the purge lists before. It's quite an ugly operation. I've never seen a purge operation this wide, this big. And this one thing that Stacey Abrams was mentioning during the debate, it's not just the 53,000 names pending, it's the 340,000 people purged. That is, their registrations have been canceled. That's why we're in court with the voting rights groups to get the information on exactly why these people were wrongly removed.
And Greg, you are a veteran of this issue.
Now, normally, with this kind of violation, the Attorney General would step in and investigate this. But as we all know, the Attorney General is Sessions, Jeff Sessions of Alabama. Now, he just upped and quit this morning.
He was asked to quit. He was asked to step
quit,
down.
of course.
Yeah.
This has all been part of
fired.
the master plan to get rid of Mueller and the investigation into the traitor Donald Trump. We all know what he's up to. So we see these shenanigans going throughout America. We have to, I don't know if there might have been suspect in Florida, but we haven't heard of any so far. But Gilliam only lost by 50,000 votes. I don't know why he gave up so easily.
I put those things in quotes when we talk about even Dinkins losing the election.
Right.
All right? Which I don't believe he lost. So I put those things in quotes. The reason I brought up Greg Palast is because he does have a running investigation of the denial of democracy to black people. And there's a lot of postings that he's done. And when you look at the history of black people in America, just look at World War II. You were in the Marines. Look at World War II, when black soldiers who had fought to free Europe came back in the South and were lynched in their uniform in the South. I mean, that's
the 40s.
You look at this stuff and you look over, see the present generation of our young people, I don't know whether they're millennials or whatever, I don't even know, but I'm talking about the guys who are in their 30s, in their, maybe even in their 40s. Even the people who came along with us weren't into black history. They weren't even into reading black newspapers. But the point is that if you knew the history, you would see a continuum and you would say, wait a minute, what are we doing wrong that we're always getting wronged? And we're always depending on the person who has oppressed and suppressed us to free us. When black people are the most powerful, creative people in the world, bar none. America doesn't run on itself. Even though it suppresses black people, underneath, black people are giving ideas and inventions, et cetera, to America. And this is continual. We're doing it today. Any other group would have been annihilated, but we're still here. So when you are going and buying into their promise of a democracy, and we vote, and then Greg Palast has a clip of a 92-year-old black woman in Georgia who voted when the voting rights bill was passed. She's voted in every election. She goes to the voting poll and her name is not there. She's been purged off the list. And her granddaughter was there crying, a grown woman crying. You understand? And when you look at this, we have to really come to terms. Now, there's another brother that folks should track down in terms of his interviews. I heard him today on Utrice Lead, and that's Gerald Horn, Dr. Gerald Horn of the University of Houston. And he gave an assessment. I mean, one of the great minds that we have, not that black people have, in America. Okay. He's bad. But the point is that at the end of his assessment, it came down to black people have to organize, which is what Brother Stokely Carmichael, forgive me for not using his, Kwame Ture, he kept saying we must organize. And Gerald Horn said, whether it's tenant associations, whether it's study groups, whether it's book clubs, church groups, we have to organize. And that's what I've been saying, not that I am the author of it, because I'm not. I know that black people are not organized, because when something goes down, we begin to try to pull together.
Well,
we should have a machine.
Let's talk about this Georgia situation.
The Georgia situation is, Kemp is not, I don't give him credit for being as smart as some of those moves look to be. But in the era of Trump, this is normal. I mean, this is a normal thing. These Southerners, I mean, these crackers, I'm going to call it like it is, I mean, they're emboldened. I mean, this is a set of, I mean, how could you be that? I mean, this is all in your face.
Let me say this, though. The reason why I started out, and it seemed like I was way out in left field, is that you need to give some kind of continuity and understanding of who the people are that we are up against and how these people became who they are. Now, we don't have enough time to deal with that. I know you're saying that we are dealing with this issue.
Neanderthal is in charge of the vote count.
Absolutely.
All right. Now let's update it.
We talk. Okay, I agree with you, and I like what Leroy did, and I think he, he put a focus on it where we can, focus. But still, when we be talking about democracy and everything, what is it that really we are trying to bring about? And you have this thinking, which comes out of a mind that has been conditioned by nature to act the way that it is acting. It is as if on the same, and it is on the same.
Look, it doesn't need that deep of an analysis.
No, it does. See, our problem is that we suffer from a knowledge of history, from a knowledge of ourselves and how we got to be where we are and who it is that we are dealing with.
Listen, and if you don't have a knowledge of all that knowledge, and I'm still making me sick that this cracker's getting away with it, that we don't have the, he can't be embarrassed into doing anything, like resigning as Secretary of State and being fair about it. My whole point is that racism has become so emboldened by Donald Trump that
That's true.
people
That's
are come
absolutely
out
true.
with a set of balls. I mean, this man is now this Stacey Abrams and him have been going at this since 2012. This is nothing new between the two of them. This has been going on all along. And nobody's able to step in and stop this nonsense. Now, when does it stop?
It stops with a consciousness of who we are and what we're up against and time. There's so many different factors that are running. You talked about black men in World War II.
So Abrams going to realize he's Neanderthal and he's going to come back and resign.
See, there are so many forces. It's like the onion. There are so many levels to this layers to this dynamics. And I just want to kick in on blacks in all of the wars that this country has had, and how, and you pointed out, that black people literally didn't just build the country with their hands. I mean, if you look at the economics of this country has always been built on the back of black people, whether it was the first economic product of indigo, which came out of Africa, and not only because it was such a prosperous crop, they didn't just bring the indigo here, they brought the people who understood how to grow the indigo and who understood everything about indigo and transplanted them, you know, because we didn't come out of Africa as slaves. We came out of Africa as great medicine people who understood all about nature and plants and medicine. In fact, Europeans would have never survived the South had it not been for Africans who was on these plantations, who knew medicine and roots and etc. But cotton, all of these things came out of Africa. Everything that made America great came out of Africa. Even your minerals that are making this cell phone and planes and all of these great technological feats still come in. The battle is still Africa. So we have to know history. We have to know who we are as the greatest people, as you pointed out, that because we're first. We have more genetic material, and this is scientific. Matter of fact, we should open all our classes in schools in teaching African people who they are with some of the latest research.
We'll talk about the coltan and the cell phone.
Right.
From the Congo.
DNA project. What that proved, what they proved, and never publicized it that much. But Africans, all people, have 6 DNA series, except Africans. Africans have 9. The importance of this is that the greater the number of DNA series one has, the greater the potential for genius and creativity. All knowledge on the planet came through African people. Before Africans went into Europe 35,000 years ago, man, culture and everything was already formulated. We took it there. We were Africans when we went there, and we were the only Homo sapiens on the planet. And I don't want to get over there again, so I'm going to try to come back to what I was talking about in terms of history. Nobody has contributed more to the formation of this country than African people, even militarily. This battle, this book, the Battle of Newmarket Heights, you talk about Charlottesville and the vote in Charlottesville and the controversy over taking down the statue of Robert E. Lee. Well, these are the black troops that took Richmond, Virginia, the headquarters of Robert E. Lee, and captured Richmond, ran Robert E. Lee out of Richmond. He tried to escape, and it was black troops who trapped him at Appomattox, where he surrendered.
Is that right?
Yes, it's all in this book. That's why I brought it. You know, I mean, our history is, and I want to say this, had it not been for these black troops, you wouldn't have the U.S. flag flying over the White House. you would have a Confederate flag flying over Richmond, Virginia, and we would not be the country, not the people that we talk about today. So they're talking about, what's the brother that took a knee?
Kaepernick.
Kaepernick kneeling. But in this book, black troops died by the hundreds to keep that flag from hitting the ground. I mean, our history is just so rich that you can't separate it from what's happening and what's going on. What's going on? Just let me say this, and I'm gonna give it up. Europeans all over the planet are dying faster than they are being born. So the birth rate is going down. Trump, and the reason why so many white people are getting behind Trump is that Trump, to so many white races, represent their last hope for maintaining power and superiority and all of that. So they are behind him because they know that their
days are numbered.
Things are changing, and if they can stop black people from rising, because there ain't other people so much that they're worried about in this country rising, it's black people, African Americans in particular, rising. So there's a concerted effort. Now, on the other hand, what white people should realize is that time and nature and the season of evolving is at hand. They're not going to beat. They're not going to beat God. They're not going to beat the Creator. The Creator is bringing us. You're fighting nature. So if you know, and Trump represent lies. These white supremacists represent a dying time, a change in time, in which if they could be a part of it, they could be, involved, and heroes, and everything else, because the bottom line is that we are one humanity. The blood of African people is what makes us a family. It flows through all of us. And since we are the first, the chosen, and we have to see it because we was on the planet tens of thousands, at least, millions of years before anybody else came here.
That is correct.
And since all knowledge came through us, you can't have an evolving of humanity without African people, because humanity has always evolved through us, because we have, and that's what that study that was done at Yale University proved, African people have the largest genetic pool of anybody, even today. And that's why we have 9 DNA series as opposed to 6 for white folk.
Well, do you suppose that's why there's so much fear out there?
Oh, absolutely.
Because a genius like Barack Obama came into office and spent 8 years being the genius that he is, and the statesman and a loving human being that he is, that Donald Trump was jealous of all this. He knows all this. Donald Trump is not stupid. All he's doing is taking the fears of white people and turning them around. So it takes us, the origins of, we're the spiritual people of the planet, coming in with a spirituality that we have. And then we have to understand that we have to explain this without selfishness. We're going to have to love our enemy. Whoa. Wait a minute. What did I say? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. And spiritually, what's going to get us out of this demonic force in the White House? What's going to have to happen, we got to turn this sucker around. Yeah, this sucker has turned America into tribalism, selfishness and greed. You forget about the goodness of Obama. People were, especially the young people, who knew nothing else but they saw Obama being the beautiful human that he was, and the girls and all the beauty, and the spirituality. You could feel. But when you seem like everybody's pushing you out of the way, and economically you got people like Donald Trump coming out of this pearly White House and telling you, man, we're going to get you your job back, and we're going to keep these Mexicans who've taken your job, and we can make sure that the black man is behind you, and all this other stuff, and these guys come running out charging. The same people who voted for Obama. Same people, but you have to understand what Trump did. He looked at a black man in office and got jealous. We all know that. And he came out with a vengeance. From 2012, he came out with the birtherism.
Brother Winston, may I interject here that all of the candidates that Trump ran against had the same agenda that he's carrying out now.
Not quite as bold. I'm a white supremacy. Okay.
I'm talking about the candidates.
Okay.
All
the
those
Bushes.
Shirt and ties and the females. What he did is use the language of the so-called
street
downtrodden Caucasians, the working class Caucasians who hadn't been spoken for by the shirt and tie people. He came along and ran that game and still runs that game. And I'm listening to Brother Clemson talk about the Neanderthal. What came to mind is the history of black women in America working on those plantations who had to nurse the babies to breastfeed the babies of those Neanderthals. I'm just adding to the history. And those babies grew up to beat the hell out of the blacks on the plantation themselves. There was no gratitude for it. So what I hear what Brother Clemson is saying, we should not be surprised by the actions of a Neanderthal mind. Now, it does not mean that everybody is a Neanderthal. The good people have to step forward and say, hey, I'm talking about among Caucasians. They have to step forth and say, hey, enough of this stuff. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says this. He says, there are white people who will help you, but they'll help you in secret. Unless their brethren come down on them. So they will help you. There are those who will help you, but the majority of them are afraid to come out and speak against.
But what about today?
What about today? Black people have to begin to look. What I got from Brother Clemson is the greatness of black people. We have to look to ourselves. Say, wait a minute, can we produce black leadership that is fearless in talking about getting rights for black people and fighting for them?
How about the rights of Stacey Abrams and following her as an example? Educated woman, she brings in everybody.
Let me tell you this.
A coalition of everybody.
That little clip that you played of Stacey, I'm not impressed when the guy is saying that she's doing something, you're calling on illegals to vote. He said that, and that's a lie. She did not address him as telling an untruth. She let that part go by. Because educated black Negroes do not, they fight according to what they read in the protocols of debates. And that
just
guy,
because she's being a lady? I mean, that was a black lady. She is a black lady.
You and I, if she threw down and said, look, you telling other than the truth, why don't you just stop that? Why don't you just stop?
Michelle Obama
if she said that, you'd be playing that clip about 20 times.
How would Michelle Obama handle it?
Michelle Obama,
you shoot low
she
and
would
I
handle
shoot
it the
high.
same way, brother. They're nice people.
Well, isn't that what we need?
What we need is a rise in consciousness.
Okay.
No, this is important. You see, and I have to go to Professor Ebo with his unified field theory equation, something that all of your mathematicians and great scientists was trying to solve.
How's he doing?
But no, he's doing fine. But this black man, the Creator brought through him an equation in which the whole world was looking for, which gives us the ability to really bring about feeding everybody on the planet, because the Creator didn't make no mistake. He did not make more mouths than nature.
Explain what he can do with water. Turning water into energy.
He can, the equation, the mathematics, everything is a mathematical equation. Okay. So what he did was solve the equation that allows you to deal with spirit as a varium, any physical entity, any spirit, because the physical entity is really the condensing of spiritual vibrations, where everything in the universe, is a large space from infinity to infinity. So, but it's full of motion, and that motion reaches every aspect of the universe at the same time. That's how fast these vibrations move, but as they slow down, they concentrate into matter. Matter is anything that takes up space. But the vibrations of the energy is still moving. You know, this table has energy, everything.
Sounds like
so
a Kabbalion.
what Professor Ebo has given us is the equation that will enable us to model all of the movements of nature, of these vibrations. And so water, that mathematics, we have the mathematics that you can literally formulate enough energy, getting enough energy from a glass of water, which is renewable, safe, to run the city for days. They're talking about now, you see these ads, where you go out and the car comes on from your mind. I mean, that's a vibration. They pick up, they haven't.
You have to read that. You have to go over that.
They have machines that literally pick up the vibrations of your thought, which is mathematics. So if you have the mathematics for that, then you can model it so that you create the ignition. You create a grid, and once you figure out how to give energy to that grid, any good engineer can then reproduce it. So our minds...
let's go back to the water, turning water into energy.
Let me try to finish this. Because where we should be going as a people, we are spending our time in division and racism and figuring out how to build a bigger bomb and a better bomb so that we can destroy humanity. When actually, if we don't solve some of the problems that we are creating, there ain't gonna be no humanity. Every nation is armed to the teeth with its fingers on the trigger, and any little mistake can set off a nuclear holocaust, and we all gone. So Trump, instead of looking at, our legislators, this government, as a people trying to move humanity into a higher plane of evolution so that we can know what love is, so we can know what happiness is, so we can know what joy. You can't understand this in the state that we're in now, in this confusion. I mean, this is a war between good and evil, and literally good will always win out. It's just that humanity might not be here to enjoy it. But you don't see films on the great tomorrow, how life can be, how you can truly have a planet, the earth, where people are living in a paradise. But you could, if that's where our mind was. So instead of looking...
I like to take us back to yesterday. Now, I think that world would have been better reached if we had Gillum reaching the governorship in Florida, O'Rourke being senator in Texas, and we still have a chance of Stacey Abrams in Georgia. This is my whole point. with all that lofty thought and all that. See, I had some vision that God was going to step in and bless us with a little sanity.
Maybe God has stepped in to stop us from being deceived by people who do not intend to give us freedom, justice, and equality.
Okay.
I was in a church a year ago, and the minister talked about, didn't get the source, but he said, you know, there was a people who did not feel worthy that God would come for them.
Mm-hmm.
And when God came for them,
they weren't ready.
They weren't ready. He had to raise, he didn't speak their language and they didn't speak his language. But the thing is, they didn't feel worthy and they didn't feel that God would love them enough to come for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now we stop there and look at the condition of black people in America, brought here over 400 years ago,
mm-hmm.
put through what we've been put through,
mm-hmm.
and still have a little bit of sanity in our brain. Why wouldn't God come for us? If you look at it from a material standpoint, God ain't gonna come for us.
Because
but if you look at it from a spiritual,
we fall and prey to the demonic forces here on this planet.
The mindset that we've been under.
We've become like the devil.
The mindset that we've been under is that contrary to our very nature.
That's right.
And as Brother Clemson said, he mentioned season. Their season is up. The indicators, and that doesn't mean for Caucasians who are watching this show, hey, you know, the Negroes are going to take over and stuff like that. We have been the most benevolent of the people on the planet. We have been.
Right.
In light of all the hell that we've gone through.
Because that's our nature.
So therefore, they no need to fear us.
Right.
We have problems, not problems, we have challenges to deal with within our community, created by the mindset of the enemy.
That's why Stacey handled them the way she did.
Look, I'm gonna tell you this. We were overjoyed, I'm saying we, I wasn't in that we. We were overjoyed that President Obama didn't throw down on that cracker, as you say, who called him a liar in the Congress when he was getting ready to make that statement. That's the same energy that Stacey has where she didn't call the guy a liar. Look, you're telling a lie, stop it. And taking the authority position. We enjoy, black people enjoy the authority position when it's taken by a black person who we know has been positioned either from a liar, etc. For people who don't believe that, look at Minister Farrakhan's interaction with Mike Wallace when he's talking about Nigeria. Put that in YouTube. You'll play it 15 times a day because Minister Farrakhan don't take no stuff. He's the nicest guy in the world, but you come at him, he doesn't have any fear. Black educated people have fear. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, this is from 1966. Black power, fear. The fear not only in Caucasians for black people having power, but in black politicians saying, hey, we need some power for our people. You never hear that. You hear black and white together, colored minorities and all this other kind of stuff. And when the bill goes through, when the law is signed, we're that part of the minority that don't get nothing, and the minority that was not a part of the struggle gets everything. All right? So black people coming out of yesterday, because that's what we are here for today, is a therefore. And black people have to not be tied in to something that's proven based on history that's not going to give us our due. I'll add this thing. This is an aside, but related to elections. Black people who you see out there on the street passing out palm cards at the time of elections, okay? Those are day jobs, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. There are scammers who are now present to scam the politician who that money comes through, that money should be coming through, and cheating the workers. So the workers come this last week looking for a check and they got a prepaid card. And that prepaid card, if you use it, you agree to give up all your information. all your information, your personal information, has nothing to do with the work that you did. This is going on right now with a major initiative in New York City, and it goes right to City Hall. And the scam is on poor black people. I've seen them myself. They get cards. And you know what a prepaid credit card?
Yeah.
When you find out the balance, that's $3. When you spend some money from it, that's $18, et cetera. So you wind up working for nothing. So that's an aside, but it's very important for us to be talking about it, because black people who are done in do not take the time to put that information out there. But that's current right now. But going back, we got to organize in our families first.
Well, I think a lot of the problems we're having is how we treat each other.
Organize within our families first.
And how we treat each other.
Yes.
That's why history becomes so important. And we need history that deals with us from an African perspective, from the origins of man to issues and events of today. That's the journey that we need to understand, because number one, when you begin to understand that journey, as we was talking a minute ago about the universe and spirit permeating the universe, being everywhere in the universe at the same time. And we know spirit can neither be created nor destroyed. And as the spirit condenses, it turns into matter. So there is nothing in the universe but the creator. So every atom in your body is permeated with the creator. There is nothing but the creator. See, but religion has pulled us away from ourselves and our historical understanding of the universe. When the African said that he was one with the universe, he saw himself as being one with the creator. And so they understood, they came up with the system of the understanding of Ma'at, which dealt with principles of how the universe operated, so that the more you live Ma'at, which is truth, justice, balance, harmony, the more you remove your ego, and the more you allow the creator to speak through you, because you move yourself. So nature is flowing through you, and nature, Ma'at, is truth, is justice, is harmony, is balance. So it ain't you who's speaking, it's the creator who is speaking through you. So looking at this time.
But how long did it take you to learn all that?
All my life. I was a minister in the pulpit for over 15 years. And
15
one
years?
Sunday, Dr. Ben came up.
Wow.
And I looked out and saw him, and I really started to lay it on, because I figured maybe I could convert him. And after the service, I saw him getting out of the pew and headed up to, the pulpit. So in my heart, I said, I did it.
The doors of the church is open.
The doors of the church is open. And so I reached out to grab his hand, and he grabbed my hand like this and pulled me to him and looked me dead in the eye. And he said, Minister Brown, why don't you stop lying to these people? And man.
And his wife's a Catholic.
Look, my heart, I mean, my whatever just dropped down on the floor. And I didn't turn his hand loose. Then he said, you can learn the truth, and then you can come back and teach.
All right.
So I got real humble. I said, well, all right. He said, come and go with me to Egypt. I said, when you going? He said, I'm going in August. So in August, I went to Egypt with Dr. Ben, and for the next 9 years, I traveled up and down the Nile with Dr. Ben, learning some of this African history. I'm answering your question.
When did Christianity become the white man's religion?
When did Christianity? Well, Christianity became the white man's religion when he rewrote it in his own image. But it was Malachite Coptic Egyptians, black folk, because Egypt is black.
And Jesus was what?
What do you mean? Jesus never... existed.
All right.
Historically.
Historically, the Jesus that we know existed.
No, brother.
All right.
And
so you're a minister coming out of a Christian church saying that Jesus never existed. All right,
historically, Jesus never existed.
The Jesus I think existed, I know existed, was an Ethiopian Hebrew.
Okay, I'm not going to.
Not a white man.
Feel everybody has their right to their belief.
Well, this is what I'm saying, how we treat each other about religion and everything else.
You asked me how did I come to understand this. But just let me say,
we know the original man was, okay.
If we understood what truth don't change. Okay. So if the Africans, in their understanding of these principles of nature, laid down all of the principles and aspects of what later became duplicated in the Christian Bible and in the Quran and in all of these religions, because truth is the foundation. So if Africans knew God or knew nature and knew the truth, thousands of years before these other religions came about, how are you going to wipe that out for a version of what they already understood? Their oneness with nature. You can't get to God through another man, another person. You can only get to nature through yourself because you are nature. And if you're going to talk to nature, you're going to have to go into you. I can't get to my mama by going through your mama. Yeah, I can't, you know. I'm just asking us to think. I'm just saying, look, let's think. Let's not be afraid.
All right. That's why this comment I make at the end of each of my shows, I mean it sincerely. I say to people, the God in me loves the God in you.
Yes.
And when I say that each of us have a God within that God consciousness that lies within you. So you reach, if I choose to be a Christian, I'm labeled Winston Gilchrist. My name means worker for Christ. So I decide to be a Christ. They've told me I look like Jesus. Now I'm a Christian. All right. Now I choose to be the Christ-like person that I'm meant to be. This is my calling, to be a Christian.
I love you.
All right? And I'm trying to be Christ-like, so I'm restoring my energy to the rest of
the God in you. And I'm being honest. I love people. I love humanity.
Hey.
I love you whether you're black, whether you're white. But I love truth.
Stay tuned for more, and we're going to try and bring some love energy to this demon in the White House. I'm telling you, he needs it. Zap, zap, zap. The God in me loves the God in you. And stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience. All right? We got a minute more for the Bronx.
All right.
Gentlemen.
Thank you so much. I hope that you understand what I have been talking about and trying to bring some insight and understanding.
Well, how do we help Stacey Adams?
I appreciate you, brothers. I really do.
How do we help Stacey Adams in her fight? The lady from Georgia. She truly is a lady.
We expose the lies and the trickery, the tricknologies being used against her. That is our duty.
Okay.
All right? Because the major media is not going to do it.
Right.
They're going to say she's off 20% and all this other kind of stuff. No. The election is the denial of democracy to black folks.
That's it. That's it. And gentlemen, it's been an event.
And read black newspapers.
Hey. Let's follow the truth. God bless you. Peace. Power to the people.